Well, aloha there, and we're back into fashion. Let's see where we left off. Undergarments, hardware, shoes, accessories. What should I start with? Well, hmm. Camera that face. And I mean, going through here, already gone so much. So I figured, yeah, I should not start around here. That's what we're talking about. We figured just go to undergarments. Alrighty. So, fashionable women of the Regency era wore several layers of undergarments. The first was the chemist or shift, as a classic smock or modern type of women's undergarment or dress, because of it being very soft, elegant, and spacious. And a low neckline if worn under evening wear, yeah, made of white cotton and finished with a plain hem that was shorter than the dress. These shifts were meant to protect the outer clothes from precipitation and were washed more frequently than outer clothes. In fact, washerwomen of the time used coarse soap with scrubbing these garments, then plug them in boiling water, hence the absence of color, lace, and other embezzlements which would have faded or damaged the fabric under such rough treatment. Chemicals that shifted also prevented the transparent muslin of or silk dresses from being too revealing. Another reason why most of the undergarments is white. The next layer was a pair of stays or corset, more lightly bone, while high waisted classic fashions required no corset for the sleight of figure. Most ordinary women still wore some kind of bust support, although the aim was to look as if they were not. The disappearance of corset or stays have been much exaggerated by the writers of the Regency period. There was some experiments to produce garments which would serve the same function as a modern brassiere. In the Mirror of Graces, AB Divorce was described an undergarment that separated separate women's breasts made of steel or iron that was covered by a type of padding and shaped like a triangle. This device was placed in the center of the chest. And oh boy, I mean, that goes to show that undergarments is not as elegant like it is nowadays. Comfortable for the damn sure. Alrighty, let me go with this. The final layer was a pepeco, which was the name of the skirt worn under the gown and could be a skirt with a boys, a skirt attached over the torso by tapes, or a separate skirt. And then goes on further from here, especially some stuff relating to stockings made of silk and knitted cotton were held by gears below the knee, but yeah, let's go to hosiery. Well, there's suspenders. The suspenders were introduced in the late 19th century were often of a white or pale fresh color. The reason why is because they use gaiters for knees. So, just to keep them in mind. Outerwear and shoes. During the time period, women's clothing was much more thinner than the 18th century, so warmer outerwear became important in fashion. Let's here there's a wrap. Then silk of summer short high-waisted jackets called suspensors were worn outdoors along with long hooded cloaks, Turkish wraps, mantles, capes, Roman tunics. Alright. Thin, flat fabric, silk or velvet or leather slippers were generally worn as opposed to high heel shoes in much of the 18th century. So yeah. Right here under undergarments, 1811 illustration of underclothes showing in one form of Regency stays. And then, yeah, Madame Riviera, 1806, Jean Acosta, Dominique Agreste Louvre. Picture looks like a painting. Pretty good for the most part. Now there's accessories. Gloves were always worn by women outside the house. When worn inside, as when making a social call or a formal occasion, such as a ball, they were removed when dying. About the length of the glove, a lady of distinction writes, if the prevailing fashion be to reject that long sleeve and to partially display the arm, let the glove advance considerably above the elbow, and there be fastening with a drawstring or armlet. But this should only be the case when the arm is muscular, coarse, or scraggy. When it is a fair, smooth, and round, it will admit of the glove being pushed down to a little above the wrists. Longer gloves were worn rather loosely during this period, crumbling below the elbow, and is described as the passage above. Gaiters could fasten longer gloves. So it seems like using the term gaiters is hard to describe because it can be used interchangeably depending on how they will be worn. I mean, that's the case with gaiters today when it comes to protecting the leg. But yeah. Recurs help personal items such as vinaigrette. Alright, then going with that. Yeah, parasols protected a lady's skin from the sun and were considered a really important fashion accessory. Along with fashionable ladies, use fans to cool themselves and enhance gestures and body language. Yeah, this is showing more of a practical sense of wearing clothes, having accessories that complement it. So I guess that this is around the time when the mini ice ages I was going through. I know North America. I don't know much about the rest of the world. I think Europe actually had to face the fact that the years later it started becoming more warmer than usual when people are adjusting, especially with having old clothes that were better suited during the mini ice age around the 1700s in North America at least. Fashionable ladies and gentlemen use fans to cool themselves and to enhance gestures and body language. With that said, it also shows that there's also people embracing new ways in fashion. I think of Mediterranean clothing where it would be more lighter. They would use accessories like plants to actually cool people off and such. So it's a new thing for Europeans to adopt. Dictori, 1795 through 1799. By the mid 1790s, neoclassical clothing had come into fashion in France. And then, yeah, French high fashion, Ancien Regime, but ultimately neoclassicism was adopted with the Association of Classical Republican Ideas, reference to Greece rather than the Republican Rome. And, yeah, alright, so let me look at it. So yeah, it does seem that they're actually embracing more Mediterranean clothing, mainly Greek instead of Roman, along with blending some new things that complements the modern body of a woman, especially when it comes to what they can wear, what they can show, and such. Emma was a highly capable in the attitudes and the influence of the dress spread from Naples to Paris as wealthy Persians took to the Grand Tour. There was also some evidence that the white muslin shift dress became popular after a thorough reform. Also, the simplification of the attire worn by preteen girls in the 1780s, who were no longer required to wear miniature versions of adult stays and panniers, probably paved the way for the simplification of the attire worn by teenager girls and adult women in the 1790s. This comes with the whole demographic thing where many people don't have to dress like aristocratic people from Europe, but rather different people in all ages, branches, races, sexes can have their own type of fashion to showcase their own individuality through fashion. Waistlines became somewhat high by 1795, but skirts were still rather full and neoclassical influences were not yet dominant. And then, yeah, going through about it against Roman and Greco uniform stuff. With classical style became the willingness to expose the breast, with the new iconography of the revolution, as well as the changes in emphasis on material breastfeeding. The chemist's dress became a sign of the new egalitarian society. And then, yeah, talk more about things like practicality when it comes to women, especially when it comes to breastfeeding, the fashionable maternity, and quote, a step further and wore a quote unquote 6-month pad under their dress to appear pregnant. So it's also to show other people about your parental status. Alright. White was considered the most suitable color for the neoclassical clothing. Accessories were often in contrasting colors. Short trains trailing behind were common dresses of the late 1790s. So it does seem that people did look at white clothing as a form of fashionable color on itself, mainly to implement Roman and Greek art, which made me think about the statues if they try to replicate that. And the reality would be yes and no, because the ancient Greek and Roman times were colorful. An example would be statues would have been colored to the point that it will represent a painting, but later on, due to wear and tear throughout the centuries, they would appear marble white as the material it was made up to be. All that paint is gone, and that many historians would like to romanticize that they had that initially, and that white is a purity color because of the marble statues, because they represent that. It's like the excuse that if in humanity yeah, this is the thing about in archaeology that people are fear about, that in humanity they would imagine that diapers will be something humans would worship due to everybody, especially families, would have diapers full of stuff inside, like buried treasure, and that people would think that we probably worship these, or there is a inherent value, even though it's just a waste. And it's something wacky I just keep on thinking about, because yeah, anything bogus back then could be bogus right now, and it could relate to that. But from what it did seem, there was a practical reasoning to have white clothes because of its transparent, abundant. See, for many people to wear them, especially as undergarments, because you're able to own many pairs of them for your clothes in order to get dirty and just easily replace. The cleaning process of it would require some straining into the colors if it's not white. And so there is practicality towards it, and it seems like people have swept into just looking at it as fashionable, where people will just get it not because of how practical, cheap it is, but of how fashionable everybody's just trending on. I mean, that would be the case with white colors today, where people usually would use them because it is a cheaper color to own. I'm also thinking about painting when it comes to buying paint. White is always the easiest color. Many people just start out with cheap, reliable, everything is white. That's why you always have a freaking American household that always have white walls and such. So, and then you got many portraits that appears things. And yeah, let me read through this. Yeah, let me read this first. This portrait of Frank Land Sisters by John Hopner gives an idea of the styles of 1795. Ruth reaching Naomi and Ophir to return the land of Moab. And then you have a portrait, 1798 picture, fashionable plates. Yeah, these are just basic photos that actually just showcases these. But yeah, the undergarments would be present as a top and a bottom, while the overgarments would still appear. So, there's colorization and stuff. And yeah, people use wrapping. And yeah, this woman, as you can see, she's wearing a suit with long sleeves, but you get obviously the undergarment just taking up much of the place. This is around the 1700s, so yeah. I guess that it's also for people to wear something very different than what the French aristocracy wore, because they would rather just have lavish colors and such. But nah. The only thing I just know for certain is how reliable the type of color garment it is around this time when they were playing around with it. Yeah, you got a woman that's pretty much just here or dressed only tight, then along with a woman who tries to look like one of the people from Rome, along with trying to play an instrument, but I don't know what it looks like. It looks like they're just trying to hold it up tight because, hey, look, it looks fancy, especially since you can see all her hair. So, it's just posing. Portrait of Emma, Lady Hamilton by Elizabeth Viguera Lebrun, 1790s, along with an idolized classified depiction of English Regency domestic scene. So pretty much just a recreational thing they're just doing. That looks like they're sewing. They're trying to make something up in a project. An idolized classes depiction of English domestic scenes, so pretty much just whatever women do, which is actually just minding their own business and just doing something they like. Yes, I mean, sewing, sewing, you can make really good things, especially if it comes to fashion. But yeah, it's just strange. So I'm imagining fashion in a way where they're just making white undergarments, and they're trying to make as much as they can. But they're probably making small accessories like gloves, hats, pins, and stuff. A theoretical 1796 contrast between Elizabethan and Victorian clothing styles, too much and too little, raised the caption of the capture by Isaac Cruikshank. Yeah, that pretty much showcases that. And it's funny because you pretty much have the men in the portraits that just are minding their own business, and they actually just don't mind the styles. Looks like in this portrait, it looks like they actually is indifferent compared to this picture, which looks like at this person versus this person looking at that person, because means they're trying to make an illustration picture. There is some subtlety you can see in order to make a comedic effect. And yeah, this is funny because I'm looking at women bickering of who's the most fashionable or who wears the most fashionable clothing. One is overdressed, one is underdressed, while the men are just dressed completely different like they two, and they're just, they're just like, oh, women dress fashionably, and if overdressed or underdressed, they still look beautiful. Also, why the hell is this woman wearing it's because while the woman's wearing a crown, this person's wearing a feather to look like a bird. This one looks like it freaking has a bird around that feather, and this one just has it sticking up. Jesus. That's funny. Alright, now more carrot captures. 1796, yeah, onward. What the hell? Is that Popeye? Yo, dog, that's Popeye! And this woman's pretty buff. That man looks like freaking mountains. And this guy... I don't... Why the hell does he have socks? Like, it's a Christmas sock. The monstrosities of 1799. Kensington Gardens. Swell. Alrighty. Too much, too little. Yes, we already gone through that. Tipsies of 1796, highly stylized parody with caricatures, women, feather hairdresses, and dandies, tight trousers, among other things. Yeah, I think that's the point. That's the point of this. Wow. So, yeah, even then, they thought that fashion was just a bit strange. Paris linens on the full winter dress, which it just means they're just not wearing white and they're still showing skin. Sure. A French invasion of the fashionable dress of 1796 and my favorite one, the monstrosities of 1799. This grand old picture with Popeye and such. Now, let's go onward to Empire, 1800 through 1815. During the first 2 decades of the 19th century, fashions continued to follow the basic high-waisted emperor silhouette, but in other respects, neoclassical influence became progressively diluted. Dresses remained narrow in the front, but the fullness of the raised back waists allowed room to walk. Colors other than white came into style. The fad for deliverous outer fabrics faded, except in the certain formal contexts, and some elements of obviously visible ornamentation came back into the use in the design of the dress, as opposed to the elegant simplicity or subtle white-on-white embroidery of the dress of 1800. Now onward to Empire Gallery, shows furthermore modernization around that time during the Regency era, where everybody's just wearing white. They're showing shoulder, skin, and yeah, this shows the pictures that are in English and French fashions. 1815, the morning dress has back gathers and long sleeves, and like the walking costume, has trim with the hemline and neat detail of the upper sleeve. So as explained, everybody who just wears informal dress wears white. Anything that is not white is just formal dress. That's, but it does show how. The use of particular colors and the variety of colors versus just using basic 1-2 colors show formality and informality. But I guess that because if they wanted to look formal, they would dress like the aristocratic people, which had different colored clothing and stuff to show their wealth. As a good example, purple, that is a color you rarely see people have unless they spend a lot of money to have it. Therefore, much of the public doesn't use it. Until synthetic purple came to be, but that was until later, and even then it's not much a prevailing thing until our modern world when it comes to fashion. Dolly Madison wears a short sleeve light pink dress with a high waistline. Let's see. Oh, so yeah, waistline coming around there and stuff. But I guess that it's just because it's tailored in a way. It's strange because you don't really get that much tailored clothes with fast fashion, like for say, here. So yeah. 1804 French painting by Marguerite Ding. Yeah, Paris fashion, conservative fashion, 3 and 4. So yeah, going through here and going through here. So yeah, it shows all the portraits and stuff. We're looking at more caricatures. And yeah, fashion of the day or time past and present, along with here, and 3 graces in a high wind because they are very comfortable in the high winds. And they look like they're part of winds because of the color of their clothing. Sure, at least they're dressed for the weather. Regency 1815 through 1820 Gallery. This era signaled the loss of any lingering neoclassical pseudo-Grayson styles in women dresses. This decline was especially evident in France due to Emperor Napoleon's suppression of trade in the fabrics used in neoclassical dress. While waistlines were still high, they were beginning to drop slightly later on more abundant decoration, especially near the hem and neck line, foreshadowed greater extravagance in the coming years. More petticoats were being worn, and stiffer, more corn-shaped skirt became popular. Stiffness could be supplemented by layers of ruffles and stuck on a hem, as well as corded or flourished petticoats. Sleeves began to be pulled, tied, and pinched in a way that were more influenced by Romantic and Gothic styles than neoclassical. Hats and hairstyles became more elaborate and trimmed, climbing higher to balance widening skirts. So it did seem that now they're formulating their own type of fashion instead of trying to mimic Greco-Roman type of work. But also pointing on that there's a decline when it comes to fashionable materials and fabrics. But let's see. Napoleon's suppression of trade in the fabrics used in the neoclassical dress. So if this is 1815 to 1820, this is around the time where his trade against Great Britain was happening, and it's starting to impact the French public along with many of Napoleon's allies. I mean, to the point that Russia started secretly trading with the British, which led Napoleon later on trying to conquer Russia, but then it spiraled out of control for his part. But yeah, it does show how things are changing into more gothic, more, I would say, uniform style. Because over time, it seems like people just want to find some uniformity in type of clothing. And also, just for people to understand that, okay, they're as fashionable to a threshold instead of trying to be so unique because it breaks the bank. And time. But yeah, all these pictures showcase here. I'm interested in number 7 because of the color. Marie Lodge wears the new fashion for rich color. Her crimson evening gown with furls of neck and sleeves is worn with an ivory shawl with a widely paste pattern border 1818. But yeah, the shawl is right below where she's sitting, and they're showing that her color red is a rich color. What about 5? 1817 walking costume is a heavily trimmed and tased. Okay, it doesn't talk much about color, so we're referring to not just the color but also the fabric. And yeah, Carrick Capture 1818, French fashion 1818, and it shows a lot more buoyancy. Yeah, monstrous cities of 1818. So let's look at and a peep of the French monastery teas. Oh. So everybody, yeah, everybody looks goofy as fuck. This guy, he just has a neck of a giraffe, and this guy is just loving it, especially his mohawk. This woman looks like he's from a cartoon. And what the fuck? Dog? Is that a hunchback? A hunchback of French aristocracy? I had to say, if the purpose of this work is just to make fun of the French public and have a good time, yeah, I think it's working good. And yeah, this guy, this is the face of scheming. Especially if they have something nefarious in his mind while going on the date. Now we're on to Russian fashion. Everything's pretty classical. It looks like these women are actually people. Sort of looked like the same woman though. I think it's just a haircut. Alright. Alright, since it's just that, we'll see. 1796 to 1819, so yeah. Okay, I see some patterns. But anywho, the time is up for me, so I come back here next time. Other than that, aloha.